Bioactive versus naturalistic enclosures. Is one better than the other? Let's find out. Hello, I'm Abby Stone at the Curly Haired Keeper, and today I want to talk about different types of enclosures, specifically bioactive and naturalistics. First things first, what the heck is a bioactive and what the heck is a naturalistic? Here's some B-roll of the bioactive that I have my Colombian rainbow ivy living in. So as you can see from that video, Ivy's bioactive is full of plants. It has several layers of substrate. You couldn't see that in the video, but it has lots of different layers of substrate. And it also has things like isopods and springtails living within that bioactive to help be more self-regulating. It's kind of its own little self-contained ecosystem. Why did you freeze? What are you doing? A naturalistic setup, on the other hand, can look like this. So that was footage of both Aries, this is Aries, my super dwarf reticulated python, and Twee, my boa constrictor imperator's enclosures. Admittedly, I am not an expert on either one, either bioactive or naturalistic enclosure setups. If you want a really beautiful expert eye on how to build a bioactive, what makes up a bioactive, check out Serpent Design. He's amazing. Wiccan's Wicked Adam at Wiccan. Wow, Adam, why is yours so hard to say? Adam over at Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles is also wonderful. If you have found my channel, you've definitely heard of him. He does really good naturalistic setups as well as bioactive setups. So both really, really good channels to go check out. Another thing to point out is I don't really like Twee's setup, my boa constrictor imperator's. His enclosure's too small for him right now. And yeah, it's just, I'm not super happy with it. So just want to throw that out there. He does have a bigger enclosure coming. It's just not going to get here for a while. Both Aries and Twee have bigger enclosures coming that I will be setting up bioactive in the near future. So let's jump right in to bioactive versus naturalistic. Is one better than the other, and how are we going to compare them? The first category that I want to use to compare them is ease of setup. How easy is it to set up a bioactive versus a naturalistic? Bioactives are harder. I'm just gonna throw that right out there. Bioactives involve a lot more research, a lot more material to set up. There's substrate, different layers of substrate, drainage layers, all the different plants that need to go in there. You need to make sure the plants work with the environment that you're building. You need to make sure the plants work with the animals that's going to be living in that enclosure. You need to make sure that the cleanup crew, the isopods and springtails, are the right species to thrive and survive in the environment that you are building for your bioactive. If you want to build out a wall or walls for your bioactives, which is so much fun, do that. If you are going to do bioactive, it's one of the most fun parts of it. You get the gist. There's a lot more involved with setting up a bioactive. Even if you do it just bare bones bioactive, there's still a lot more involved with it than a naturalistic. Bare bones naturalistic is one type of substrate, whatever you need to create the parameters that you need for the animal that's going to be living in there, and some fake plants. That's about it. Category number 1, I think clear winner here is naturalistic. Naturalistic's way easier. If you're talking about how fun it is to set it up, I mean, honestly, naturalistic can be super fun to set up too. So yeah, I think we're just going to give this category to naturalistic. Category number 2, how much does it cost? As you might have guessed from the ease of setup category, bioactives are going to, in general, cost more than naturalistics. You have more that you're going to be purchasing to set them up. It's just, in general, up front, going to cost a little bit more to get a bioactive started. So cost category, I think naturalistic also takes this one. 2 points to naturalistic, 0 for bioactive. Category number 3, enclosure care and maintenance. Not caring for the animal that lives in the enclosure, but the enclosure itself. Naturalistics, pretty easy. You have to spot clean the substrate once in a while. Once in a great while, you probably want to completely change out the substrate. If you have fake plants, you may want to clean those once in a while. That's about it. There's no additional living things in the naturalistic enclosure that you need to care for, feed, water, etc., especially if you do fake plants. You can do things like potted plants in a naturalistic, like what I have in Aries enclosure. But again, those just take some watering once in a while, and that's it. Bioactives take a little bit more care and maintenance. I think this is where people sometimes get a little confused, because I think bioactives have the misconception of being super easy, and I don't think that's the correct conception. Conception? Is that the right word? Are we having babies? Bioactives, on the other hand, have other animals you need to care for. You have your isopods. You may need to maintenance feed them. In my case, I keep snakes in my bioactive, so I do need to maintenance feed the isopods about once a week just to make sure they're getting enough food. There's plants to check up on. Yes, it is a self-regulating environment. However, it doesn't rain inside of the enclosure, so once in a great while, I do water the plants when they need it. It's not a ton of work, and it is care that I truly enjoy doing. So just know that if you are setting up a bioactive, you could have additional things to care for. It's not a one and done, never have to think about it ever again kind of thing. Enclosure care and maintenance. I think this one also goes to naturalistic because you don't have a bunch of other living things you have to maintain and care for. So yeah, another category to naturalistic. Category number 4, health benefits and potential issues. Let me begin this category by saying any way you keep your animal could come with potential health benefits and issues. If you think you have a health issue with your animal, take it to the vet. That being said, some of the health benefits that I have found keeping bioactive and one of my favorite things, is there's no residual urates or feces hanging out. I do check Ivy's Bioactive once in a while to see if there's any poops hanging out that need to be cleaned up. If I see them, I spot clean them. Most of the time, the isopods have gotten to her poops before I do, so they're cleaned up, and any residual urates and feces are also taken care of by the isopods and springtails living in her enclosure. This is really, really nice because it reduces the chance of bacterial growth and contributes to the health and well-being of the animal living in the enclosure. Naturalistics don't have that cleanup crew, so there is a chance of residual urates and poops building up within the enclosure. On the flip side to that, if you have a naturalistic, it's easier to see the poops that your snake makes. Poops can give you an insight on any health issues that are developing. In the Bioactive, I rarely see a poop from Ivy. The isopods almost always get to it before I do, so it can be a little harder to get an idea of what her feces are looking like. So if she does have an early stage health issue that's showing up in her fecal matter, it can just be a little harder to catch. So something to keep in mind if you decide to keep Bioactive. I personally find Bioactives way easier to maintain humidity and temperature levels. If I need to adjust it, I also find that to be a super, super easy thing to do in Bioactives as well. Naturalistics, obviously, you can create the humidity and parameters that you need for the animal you're keeping in that naturalistic. I personally find it a little more challenging to do this, but again, that's just me. The other thing that can be a little more difficult to find in a Bioactive, at least find early, are things like snake mites. If you do find snake mites in your Bioactive, don't panic. I do have another video that talks about how to get rid of snake mites in a Bioactive. So there's a way to do it. It's a little bit more of a pain in the butt, I think, than if you keep other ways, but it's not impossible. I think for this category, again, for me personally, and this is obviously all from my perspective and my experience, I'm gonna give the health benefits potential issues category to Bioactive. I've had a little bit more success and ease of keeping with a Bioactive versus naturalistics. Category number 5, well-being of the animal. As long as your animal has enough space, it has enrichment, and it is healthy and happy, it doesn't matter what type of enclosure you're keeping it in. Naturalistic, Bioactive, or any other kind of way. I have personally found that my snakes behave differently when they are in a naturalistic or a Bioactive versus something like a quarantine enclosure. Quarantine enclosures are great. They absolutely serve a purpose. They're less, I think they're just less fun for the animal than something like a naturalistic or a Bioactive. There's less sensory stimulation going on for them, so there's less for them to explore in the first place. All right, final tally, Bioactive versus naturalistic. No. All right, so naturalistic won by a long shot. However, that's not gonna stop me from making the next 2 enclosures that I get for Aries and Twee into Bioactives. That's the plan right now. Just because something wins in a certain category doesn't mean you have to do it. You may like keeping a certain way because it works better for you and your animals, and that's awesome. There's lots of different ways to keep animals healthy and happy and provide them with enrichment and maintain their well-being at the same time. So keep that in mind as you go through and watch other videos. Lots of different ways to do something the right way. Let me know, is naturalistic actually better than bioactive? Do you keep naturalistic? Do you keep bioactive? Do you keep some other way? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to live life with brave curiosity, and I will catch you next week. Bye. Naturalistics, just like my hair. Yeah, I'm weird.